This is Seth Morton. I'm moderator of the representative town meeting, and we will call this regular meeting of the representative town meeting to order. And without objection, we'll accept the agenda, and we'll take a motion to approve the minutes of the September 21, 2020 regular meeting.
Seth, do you want to have me call out who's here first?
Okay. I thought you would count. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
We'll do a call to order first.
Okay. I thought you just did that.
Well, I did, but
okay.
You can call out the names.
All right. So this is Kate Bush, the town administrator speaking. Just some important things for you to remember before we begin. The organizers, and that's Cecil Wade and myself, we see a list of who's entered the virtual room. We don't literally see you on the screen, but if you can hear me speaking right now, you're in the room and you're recognized as being in attendance. I'm going to read the list of members in attendance shortly. I will be doing it in alphabetical order by your first name. I know that's a little confusing, but that's how the software shows you on the screen. We're starting the meeting with everybody's mics on mute. If you wish to be called on to speak, you need to raise your virtual hand. And I'm going to show you momentarily what that looks like. This is your hand. If you can see my screen, it has a little green arrow. When it's green, it's down. If you want to raise it, you click it. It turns red. That means it's up. There's also a question function. You shouldn't use that to ask questions about items on the agenda. That's to ask a technical question. And one of us, it communicates directly with me and Cecil. One of us will answer you. There'll be a little field where you can fill out your question. And then lastly, votes are going to be taken by polling function. You'll see a question pop up on your screen like this. There'll be yes or no or abstain questions. And when the question is called, you'll have a few minutes to answer. I'll know pretty much right away how the vote goes. After the meeting, I will get a report that shows how everybody voted, and I give that to the town clerk for the minutes. Okay, so let me call the roll now. We have Adele Conniff, Amy Barsanti, Amy Chickles, Andrew Millar, Barbara Thorne, Barry Baldwin, Bert von Stupelnagel, Bill Smith, Brad Patelli, Brian Rahill, Carolyn Bain, Cassie McSeary, Catherine Kazim Bailey, Cheryl Russell, Christine Castles, Claire Sartori, Colin Kelly, Curtis Butler, David Bain, Derek Lublin, Diane Conalog, Ted Hawkins, Edward Washeka, Elizabeth Lane, Eric Golis, Frank Edelman, Frank Kemp, Harry McLaughlin, Holly Giordano, Iris Mix, Jack Davis, James Howe, Mac Patrick, Janet Grogan, Jay Hardison, Jennifer Moeller, Jennifer Woodbury, Jim Cameron, Joan Davis, Joe Michelli, Kara Bonsack, Karen McNichol, Kenneth Fiveson, Laura Mosher, Liza Lucas, Lois Schneider, Lucy Fiore, Louisa Brackman, Carolyn McGooey, Marcy Minnick, Marie Handler, Mark Adeletta, Martha Banks, Martha Luz, Michael Casolo, Michael Heitz, Mike Wheeler, Monica McNally, Patrick Kane, Patty Baumgartner, Penelope Wilson, Peter O'Connor, Peter Marusik, Richard Poley, Rob Warner, Robert Lyons, Rolf Oben, Sandra Savage, Sarah Perrant, Sarah Baldwin, Scott Zimmerman, Seth Morton, Sheila Sherwood, Stacy T.A., Sue Ellen Mitchell, Susan Luritzen, Suzanne Handler, Terry Duffy, Teresa Vogt, Thomas Moore, Vincent Argamball, Virginia Gijon Camano, Werner Domitner, William Cusack. All right, Seth.
Thank you, Kate. That way of calling the roll, we're using, instead of calling out each person and having them say that they're here, That seems to really go much more smoothly and hopefully make us run better than we did the last meeting, which was pretty good, I thought. So we'll call the meeting to order at this point, and without objection, ask to accept the agenda. And we'll take a motion to approve the minutes of September 21.
Okay, so if you need someone to raise their hand for a motion.
Yes, if
I
somebody.
see several. So Clara Sartori.
Thank you, Clara. And a second.
I see multiple hands raised. Bert von Stupelnagel.
Bert, thank you. Great. Any corrections, additions?
I see no hands raised.
Great. Not seeing any. What do you think, Kate? Have everybody raise their hand if they are in favor?
Nope, I can send out the poll.
Oh, okay. That's right. We have a poll. That's right. Please send the poll. There we go.
Okay, it looks like it has passed virtually unanimously.
Ah, that's wonderful. Okay. Well, we'll move on to announcements. I am sorry to say that I've been notified that Karen Diller is in the hospital. So she's not feeling well. And tonight, Lisa Buxton, who is the vice town clerk or assistant town clerk, is going to fill in on her behalf tonight. And we wish her all the very best. Also, we hear that Joan Davis is retiring from the RTM, and I have received a proclamation from the first selectman of the town of Darien, and it reads as follows. Whereas Joan has been a resident of Darien since she was a preschooler, and her interest in politics has been evident for decades. She was first elected to the RTM in 1986 and served as District 4 chairman. She spent many years as a member of the RTM Education Committee and has been a steadfast advocate for Darien students. And whereas she was first elected to the RTM in November 1986, serving in District 3, she moved to Dubois Street in 1990, and from then until 2020, she served in District 4 on both the Education Committee and the PZNH Committee. And whereas in her time on the RTM Education Committee, she has supported many initiatives, often suggesting that we spend more money on the schools, she has used her background as a substitute teacher to inform and to advocate for the most effective forms of reading instruction and has been an outspoken critic of anything less than best practice. And whereas Joan has also been an active member of the Darien League of Women Voters, taking responsibility for press releases, and most importantly was the author of Seeds of Change, a history of the Darien League of Women Voters 1929 to 2004, compiled to commensurate the League's 75th anniversary. She won the League's Volunteer of the Year Award in 2018. And whereas in her spare time, Joan has been a world traveler, skier, and writer, she has had articles published not only in Darien, but also in the Saturday Review, Grade Teacher Magazine, and Cobblestone. And whereas the RTM will miss Joan's dedication, enthusiasm, and love for Darien, and now, therefore, I, Jamie J. Stevenson, first selectman of the town of Darien, by virtue of the authority vested in me, do hereby announce and proclaim Monday, October 19, 2020, to be Joan Davis Day, and ask our fellow citizens to join us in recognizing her accomplishments, dedication, and loyal service to them and to the town of Darien, dated 19 October 2020. Jamie J. Stevenson, First Selectman, Town of Darien. I would take a motion in favor of this proclamation.
I see multiple hands raised.
Wonderful. And a second?
And you've got more hands raised.
Wonderful. All those in favor, say aye and raise your hand.
And it looks like they're all raised.
Wonderful. I have this proclamation for Joan, and I will deliver it myself. The next item on the agenda is a briefing from Darien Health Director David Knopf concerning COVID-19. David, we can't thank you enough for the pre-mailing, which was extensive and really had a lot of information in it. But we're very pleased that you're here tonight and look forward to hearing from you now.
Thank you, Seth. Unfortunately, I must apologize. I initially sent out the quarterly report to the selectmen from 2019. I think I was feeling nostalgic for the good old days when things were so simple prior to COVID that made me just kind of send out last year's report instead of this year's. My apologies. Our big problem last year at this time was a triple E mosquito. This year it's a lot different. So as I state in the beginning of my report to the selectmen, everything that the health department does is now pretty much redefined. Although we still have the same responsibilities, we've had a whole bunch of new things put on our plate that we are now trying to manage and deal with. We're becoming experts in the field that we had no involvement in prior to this. But one thing that I would like to point out is that, and I'm not sure if there's a reference to the weekly report that we post on the website that we've been posting on Tuesdays. The state health department has announced that they're going to be doing a metrics data release every Thursday. So, and that kind of goes to keying in activities and responses for communities based on a rate of positive cases per 100,000. And so what we want to do is to have our report come out on the same day, our weekly report come out on the same day as the state report, and reference the state report so that folks can look to the state and see how we compare with the rest of the state. This is a new initiative from the state health department that was just announced on Friday. So I think that this is exciting, and it really does give a snapshot of how we in Darien compare with the rest of the state and what our daily or our actually 14-day averages look like compared to the kind of tripwires that are set for response. So, and just for the record, right now we're well below any response needed for state or taking action such as rolling back the approvals for activities to phase 2, which is what this is intended to respond to, where there are now spikes occurring in other parts of the state. Interestingly enough, and this will be, you'll be able to see this on that link, the eastern part of the state, which was spared pretty much the big outbreak in the spring, like we had, is now bearing the brunt of the positive cases. We are constantly, we work constantly with the director of nursing at the schools and making policies, decisions, and figuring who needs to quarantine. It's very important that we keep the schools open, obviously, and do our best to understand illness and track down. We have a really good, I think, cooperative arrangement with the schools at the moment. They're in daily communication, even throughout the weekend. We are in the daily operations. We are doing our inspections of the food service facilities and cosmetology salons and ensuring that those facilities are, in fact, practicing COVID safe operations, including limiting seating, masks, and social distancing. I have to commend the community because we've done quite well in comparison with a lot of other communities in maintaining a relatively low rate of infections in town. I do want to go on record and stress to both the RTM and the public, anybody listening, that there's the testing process that has been encouraged. Getting tested, or be proactive to get tested. We are finding that antigen testing has been problematic and is giving a lot of false positives for asymptomatic people. I can't stress enough at this point that if you're going to go for testing, that's the rapid test antigen testing. I can't stress enough how important it is that if you want to be screened, get a PCR test. It's still the gold standard. That's the nasal swab that so many people don't really like because it's uncomfortable. I can attest by personal experience that the discomfort is very temporary, but the results are solid and they're well worth the aggravation. We have the drive-through test clinic at Leroy West parking lot. They're turning around. Not that I'm endorsing any one activity because we are, as a town, are not invested in that. We don't have a contract. It's just we're allowing Murphy Medical to utilize our space at the parking lot, which is great because, frankly, there aren't that many cars in the lot these days. So it's not a financial interest in the town, but there's a very great service that provides to the town. He does a PCR test and the test results are available 24 hours later. So far this year, since July, actually, since July, we've done over 1,000 tests, or Murphy's administered over 1,000 tests at that facility. And so far we've had a grand total of 5 positive results on that testing. So, but it's great information and it's a great service to the community, but it is the PCR swab test, and that's what we need. We're getting too many false positives, and it's creating problems in assessing who needs to quarantine, who needs to isolate, and the best time to do antigen testing is if you're sick and you just want to confirm that you have COVID, but not if you're well. So please, I'd like to emphasize the importance of the proper type of testing. We're going to be providing a kind of a Halloween guide. I know that lately all I've been hearing on the news is talking about Thanksgiving, the holidays, and nobody's talking about Halloween, which is just around the corner. We will be issuing a press release on safe Halloween practices. One thing we want to guard against is people thinking, well, we're not going to send the kids out trick-or-treating. We'll have parties and have smaller parties and groups of people come over the house and get together that way. Well, we're finding that small parties and small get-togethers statewide are, in fact, somewhat problematic, and that there's quite a bit of illness associated with the small get-togethers. I did, as scrolling through on the screen, there's the my report to the Board of Selectmen. I hope that if anybody looked through it, they have any questions about that. The other item that I see that was just flashed up was the press release indicating the DPH new weekly COVID alert system. So that's the one that shows the, that's it. That's the one that shows the hotspots. And as you can see, Darien is all gray. And we'd like to keep it that way. And that's the lowest category for concern. The red zone is when we're starting to consider whether or not they being municipalities will be asked to roll back to phase 2 restrictions. On the next page of that document, you'll see what red means. So you start really getting more involved in practices and events that are going on in the community. And we were there at one point, but we don't ever want to go back there. With that, I'm not sure that I had anything else that I had prepared, other than to say, there's not a day that doesn't go by without a different wrinkle on questions associated with COVID. And in the changing environment with the CDC and the state health department and the evolution of thought, it's very difficult, and the evolution of the sector policies for reopening. It's really hard to keep up with just everything that's happening. But we do our best. We do our contact tracing. We're going to be applying for some grant funding to try to get additional, hopefully not needed, nurses to do some contact tracing should our case counts go up as we get further into winter. So we'll proceed with that. With that,
David,
I think,
oh,
yes.
looks like you have a couple questions.
Sure, I am sure I do, and I'd love to answer them if I can.
Stacy?
Hi, David. Thank you so much for this information and all your hard work. I was just wondering how you're communicating this information and important information about this to the whole community, to the whole Darien town and community.
Well, I think our biggest method of communicating the information is through our weekly reports where we're providing data. The other thing, as far as I said, with Halloween guidance, we'll be issuing a press release. We try to stay current on our website with respect to even, the announcements for the drive-through clinic. But I'm certainly open to suggestions for additional methods of getting word out. There's a function of time as well, so, but I'm open to suggestions.
Amy Barsanti? Amy?
Yes, sorry about that. I believe most of the colleges are following a very similar model where they're sending the kids home the week before Thanksgiving or even the week of Thanksgiving, and then they're going to be home probably till the end of January, I think is the most consistent model. And I can imagine just the testing having a big load of drive-in people wanting to get tested before the holidays for Thanksgiving, so they have confidence that they can go see their grandparents and elderly aunts and uncles, etc. I don't know if that has been anticipated. I can imagine a lot of increased capacity being needed in those immediate days preceding Thanksgiving.
Well, yes, you're right. And also the fact that most of the country is under the travel advisory that people have to get tested. And it's encouraged they get tested before the kids come back. But in knowing that probably a lot won't or can't, we have talked to our drive-through clinic operator, Murphy Medical, and he said he could gear up as necessary. Right now we're doing 2 half days, and we'll see how that works at that time. But yeah, when they come back, if they're coming back from any one of those states, and I don't know if it's 40 or 35, it changes every Tuesday. You know, they'll have to quarantine for 14 days, which impacts the families too, you know, and so I'm sure that nobody's going to really want to do that when they come home.
Okay, Frank Edelman.
Thank you very much. Mr. Knopf, since you mentioned quarantine and earlier you mentioned isolation, can you just describe in a brief way what the difference is between quarantine versus isolation? And then who should be practicing those different levels of safety? That is, if you have a test, if you suspect you're exposed, can you just run through that very quickly? Thank you.
Sure, thanks for asking that question. Quarantine is when you've been exposed to somebody who's positive. You're not sick, but you need to stay away from others. Isolation is somebody who is sick and they need to stay away from others. It's just, the difference is whether you're sick or not between the two. The outcome is the same. You still need to be separate from the rest from contact from people.
So in practice, what that looks like on a practical level, say in the home, is they're exactly the same, you're saying?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome.
Christine Castles. Christine Castles, you have your hand raised. Okay. Ted Hawkins.
Yes, thank you very much. David, just a slight change of topic. Flesh-eating bacteria in Long Island Sound, has that been a problem for our beaches?
You know, I love it when I get a different question. Thank you. But it is not. And what that is we have not had any cases here. There are 5 reported along the entire stretch of Long Island Sound in Connecticut, 5 cases. That's a lot considering that we usually don't get many, but there were none in town, and I wouldn't necessarily call it a widespread problem. And what it is it's really a Vibrio infection, not so much that fearful flesh-eating bacteria, but what it is it's if you go in the water and you have a pre-existing wound or a break in the skin and there happen to be Vibrio there, that particular type of Vibrio, it can get into the wound and cause it to really kind of get very seriously infected. But it's an opportunistic thing, and it's not something that would affect anybody in the water if if their skin isn't punctured. So if you have a bruise, the old, used to be go in salt water, you'll heal faster. Don't do that, and if you're going to if you want to go in the water and you have a bruise, make sure you wear a really good bandage on it. No, I wouldn't characterize it as being a widespread problem.
Thank you. I know there's some rumors of a beach closure in Westport, and I guess one of the 5 was at Hammonasset.
I'm not sure.
Yeah. Okay.
But I don't think that the beach closures were associated with this.
Okay. That was a rumor. All right. Thank you very much, David.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, and Teresa Vogt. Teresa? Did you want to ask a question?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. David, so I follow Governor Lamont and his daily reports. And if I look at last Monday's report on the COVID cases and the list by towns, last Monday, Darien was at cumulatively 265. Today, they were at 270. We were at 274. Yet we're not hearing anything. Like I do think we need to be more proactive in telling people in the community that we are not recording 0 cases on a weekly basis. But then when I also look further at the data on the website for Darien, and I'm looking at the age groups, I'm wondering, are we encouraging entire families to get tested if a parent tests positive? What's the process?
Yes, for that. And if any one member of a family is positive, we certainly are recommending that others in the family get tested. So when we do our interviews, when we find out about a case, that's one of the things that we'll recommend. And as far as the numbers, what's happened is there's been a data, they'll call it a cleanup with the state. And so we've found in the last week or so, there have been a few cases that were kind of started back in September that just popped up this, in the past week or so. So we're constantly, the state is constantly playing catch up with the data. So our numbers are going to show an increase this week, but that's going to be cumulative over the next couple of. Looking backward, it's going to change our weekly schedule for going back probably 2 or 3 weeks. So yeah, it's a constant kind of checking and double checking and triple checking the database so that we are staying current with what's going on. Did that answer your question?
Okay, Lisa Yarnell.
Yeah, yeah. Mhm.
Lisa Yarnell.
I'm unmuted now. Hi, David. Thank you very much for all your work. We all understand how much this is put on your department, and I really appreciate it. One question about contact tracing in Darien. Is there any being done, and can you tell me what's going on?
Our public health nurse will contact, there's a program called Contact CT, and our public health nurse follows up on any of the reports that are noted in Contact CT, does interviews for any of the reported cases there. Right now, and if the nurse doesn't do it within 24 hours, the state does it. So, and at that point, the contact tracing is designed to kind of provide information about who needs to quarantine, recommending testing, and try to evaluate the types of exposures that occurred to determine the level of risk that they might have.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, and I think that's it.
Really well.
Okay.
Well, thank you, Seth, for the
Kate.
invitation.
I'm
Certainly.
sorry.
Kate, I can see at least 2 hands raised, Christine Castles and Robert Lyons.
Hers is, Christine has got a problem with her hand. Let me unmute. Robert Lyons. Did you have a question?
Yes, I did. Is Darien's response to COVID materially different from other towns in Fairfield County?
I hope not.
Well, I'm sorry. From your perspective, I guess I should have added. Are we doing anything differently?
I don't think so. We're tracking things on a daily basis. We're doing contact tracing. We're paying attention to the state health department's guidance. We're working with the school system. We might be working closer with the school system than some of the other communities but I don't think we're doing anything materially different.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
Okay, next item is just a briefing on voting they kept it broad, briefing on voting in the 2020 election. It's sad that Karen can't be here, but Lisa has agreed to step in. And she didn't know she was stepping in until today because we didn't know that Karen was in the hospital till this morning. So for any detailed answers to questions, if you get them to me by email, we'll get a written response out. But Lisa, you can give an overview for sure. Without further ado, Lisa Buxton.
Okay, thank you so much, Seth. So as you can imagine, as the office responsible for absentee ballots, we have been extremely busy processing applications and ballots locally and overseas. To date, we have mailed out 5,610 ballots and received back 2,421. For those of you who have not yet voted, here's an update on the status of the RTM portion of the ballot. In District 1, there are 7 candidates for 8 vacancies. In District 2, there are 9 candidates for 8 vacancies. In District 3, there are 7 candidates for 7 vacancies. In District 4-1, there are 7 candidates for 10 vacancies. In District 5, there are 5 candidates for 8 vacancies. And in District 6, there are 5 candidates for 8 vacancies. As you will note, there is a contest in District 2. However, there are several vacancies in the other districts, so we encourage you to spread the word that there is still time to register as a write-in candidate for the RTM. The deadline for doing so is noon on Monday, November 2nd at the town clerk's office. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Lisa. I did get some questions from Frank Edelman. I think Jim Cameron had the ones answered tonight, which is terrific. Lisa, thank you for getting that data together by district.
Yes.
Nice going.
All right, thank
you. Mark had some 3 heavy-duty questions, which I promised him I would distribute to the RTM and also that we would get answers together for it. We just didn't have too much time to react today.
Right, yes, no, we will definitely get answers tomorrow.
Great. But any any questions that anybody might have? Go ahead, but we're limited in how we can respond here. Okay. Hearing none, or Kate?
Yep, you're good.
Okay. The next item is 20-26, consideration and action on appropriating and authorizing bonding of 2.340 million for engineering services and upgrade for the sewer infrastructure. And on behalf of Finance and Budget, we're happy to hear Jack Davis tonight. And we're glad to see you're feeling better.
Jack Davis, District 3, Chair of the RTM Finance and Budget Committee. I move Resolution 20-26, consideration and action on appropriating and authorizing bonding of $2,340,000 for engineering and upgrade of sewer infrastructure. Do I have a second?
You have second. Lucy Yarnell.
Thank you. If there's no objection, I'll waive the reading of the resolution. I sent out the report early. I'm going to go through it as quickly as I can. And I may leave some of the things out that was on the report, but financials associated with the authorization appropriations of 2.34 million in bonding of said appropriations for this is what we're going to discuss. I'm going to let the details of the project be discussed by Public Works. The RTM F&B Committee met in a virtual meeting with the RTM Public Works Committee on Thursday, October 15th. Ed Gentile was Director of Public Works, was in attendance, and Cecil Wade was our virtual administrator. We'd like to thank both of them for being there. Usually when doing an appropriation and bonding resolution, it's pretty simple. We authorize what is to be accomplished, authorize the bonding, and state the amount that will be paid through taxes for the repayment of principal and interest. This appropriation and bonding resolution is different. While the town is issuing the bond, because only the town can issue the bond, it is for the sewer authority. And I realized during the budget process, although we make transfers, we really don't discuss the self-supported funds. So in order to better understand certain parts of this resolution, I just wanted to briefly go over some things. The sewer operating fund appropriations are primarily used to maintain, repair, and operate the system of sewer mains, including trunk lines, interceptors, and pumping stations that lift or propel sewage towards the treatment facility location in the city of Stamford. Darien pays on a basis of its flow that it sends to the WPCF in proportion to the overall flow for the treatment facilities. Last year's estimate of Darien's portion of flow was between 15.7 to 15.8% of the total flow that the WPCF, means the Water Pollution Control Facility, received. The adopted 21 budget was $4,009,000 plus change, the lion's share of it being the cost for the treatment. The current contract that we have with the sewer authority in Stamford has a floor at 12%. That means we're paying more than what our floor is, and that's part of the reason for this project. The other part that I wanted to mention is that it's self-supporting because the Sewer Commission reviews all the expenses, sets a rate for those connected to the sewer lines based upon the calculated flow from each connection based upon another formula. And those funds and revenues are reflected in the sewer assessment.
Muted.
And that adopted budget was $3.9 million. So those assessments go to offset the operations of the fund, plus they have some reserves there. On the resolution, there are two parts.
Unmuted.
Resolutions. The first is the appropriation. In this case, is $2.34 million. The second part is how we're going to fund it. In this particular, because there's various ways we can do it, general fund, taxes, blah, blah, blah. But this specific is going to be through bonding. That's the funding of the appropriation. The appropriation was determined based upon a calculation of amount. Here, we are authorizing the sewer authority to spend $2.34 million. The amount was derived from the following. Design cost for the project is estimated to be $689,913. Estimated capital improvements from that design cost was between $1.25 million to $1.5 million. A 10% construction contingency was added to the 1.5, and that brought the total to $2,339,913, which was rounded up to $2,340,000. The town has also been awarded a Clean Water Fund grant of approximately 55% of the design portion of the project. That's $690,000 that we mentioned. The max of the grant will approximate $379,000 based upon the final design costs. If this grant is received, it will offset the amount to be bonded, not increase the appropriation. So while the total appropriation will remain capped at $2.34 million, if we get approximately $279,000, the bonding of this will be under $2 million. There have been some preliminary expenses associated with the project. The funding has been paid through existing appropriation in the Sewer Operations Fund. Once the project is approved by the RTM, those expenses will be brought into this project in the $2.34 million approved, and this project will reimburse the sewer fund for the funds already expended. In conversations with Jen Chinesky, Director of Finance, the issuance of bonds for the sewer project may not occur until the project is completed. That means we're not going out immediately and bonding for this. At that time also, we'll know what the total grant amount is, and it might be funded a little bit earlier than the completion of the project if we need to reimburse the general fund. So let me explain that last part. Due to the town's sizable general fund balance, the town will be fronting the cash required for this project from the general fund until the town does bond. it will be setting up a due to and a due from account. And that makes sense because the earnings rate on investment is zero investment rate is not high. And therefore, if we're funding it out of the general fund balance, we're actually saving the town, the sewer authority funds by not having to pay interest for the 1 to 2 years of which we're fronting money. On the total bond, the resolution again approximates $2,340,000 and authorizes funding of only that amount through the combination of funds, bonds and grant funds. The town cannot borrow the full amount and receive grant funds. For every dollar of grant funds that we receive, it will reduce the town's authorization to borrow by $1. If the full debt service, if the full grant is awarded, the debt service is anticipated to be about $122,000 a year, and that accounts for the principal and interest for this project. And again, it will be put into the self-contained funds and paid by the sewer customers, not through property taxes. So again, the town is issuing the bond, but this is a self-contained fund for this bond, and taxes will not be affected. During the course, I did hear some questions on accounting for how this will be done because it has some nuances to it. So basically, again, in discussions with Jen, here's the accounting mechanics for the project. Once approved, a bond fund account for the project will be established on the town's ledger. Project expenditures will be recorded in this newly created bond account. As the town spends money, the cash will be fronted from the general fund, and a due to the general fund will be recorded on the bond fund balance sheet. As the town receives grant funds, the revenue will be recorded in the bond fund, and the cash will reimburse the general fund for any amount outstanding. And if it covers the full amount, then there, otherwise it will stay there and cover other expenses. When the town does bond, it will be total expenditures less grants received. The bond proceeds will be credited to the bond fund, and the due to the general fund will be brought down to zero. One final comment. As of June 30th, 2020, the town's outstanding debt totaled $68,900,000 and change. Scheduled payments for fiscal year 21 is $6,711,000. Remembering that the town retired debt earlier in the fiscal year, resulting in a reduction in scheduled payments for this year, and we'll have some reduction in scheduled payments next year of about $300,000. The town does have an additional $44,637,000 and change authorized but unissued for active projects, of which $42,942,000 plus change is associated with the Oxridge Elementary School. The RTM Finance and Budget Committee, with 10 of 17 members present, voted unanimously in favor of this resolution and recommends the same to the full RTM. One last comment, as this is the last meeting of this legislative year. I'd like to thank all the members of the F&B committee for their hard work, thought-provoking discussions, and commitment, and look forward to working with all of you who are returning next year's legislative session. Thank you. Respectfully submitted, Jack Davis.
Thank you,
I'm
Jack.
done. I can be muted.
Thank you, Jack. Nice job. Speaking on behalf of Public Works, Monica McNally.
Good evening. I'm Monica McNally, District 2, Chair of Public Works. And Jack went over the financial part of the project. I'd like to go over what the project will actually do. The Sewer Commission initiated this project about 2 years ago with a request to the DPW for a study on improvements to the sewer infrastructure. A consultant was hired about a year ago. This looks to be a 3 to 4 phase project. We are voting on phase 1 funding tonight, and this is a project that will cover 8 to 10 years. The engineering design consultant, Arcadis, assisted in applying for the Clean Water Grant that Jack mentioned, and also began an inflow and infiltration study in October of last year with the goal of reducing inflow and infiltration townwide. Inflow is stormwater that enters the sewer system, and it shouldn't. It can come from sump pumps, it can come from roof drains, downspouts, drains from driveways, etc. This water should be going into the stormwater system or be allowed to soak back into the ground. Infiltration is groundwater that enters the sanitary sewer system through pipe disconnects or cracks or leaks in the sanitary sewer joints or manholes. This can be caused by age-related deterioration, loose joints, or root infiltration, things like that. Groundwater can enter these cracks or leaks whenever the soil above the sewer system becomes saturated. Inflow and infiltration are called clear water, differentiated from sewer wastewater. Sewer systems carry sewer wastewater from toilets, sinks, your dishwasher, etc. Inflow and infiltration add clear water to sewer systems, increasing the load on these systems. During dry weather, the impact can vary, but with very wet weather, it's another story. Rain starts filling the sanitary sewer systems with clear water, but these pipes are much smaller than your stormwater drain pipes. Once they become overloaded, wastewater mixed with stormwater will back up and could cause flooding of basements or homes or streets. Darien experienced this in 2018 when one storm released over 600,000 gallons of sewage onto the Post Road by Rings End Road due to a collapsed 24-inch reinforced concrete pipe. Inflow and infiltration carry a big price. As Jack mentioned, all water entering a water treatment facility must be treated as wastewater. The Darien Department of Public Works estimated that in fiscal 2020, we sent approximately 880 million gallons of water to Stanford to be treated, and almost 330 million of that was clear water, which is costing us hundreds of thousands of dollars in unnecessary costs to treat. There's also wear and tear on equipment. The pumps that are involved with wastewater operate 24/7. However, they have to work harder as the water level load increases. This unneeded strain shortens the life expectancy of these expensive pipes, which run about $100,000 per repair or rehab. So as with most situations, you can't manage what you can't measure. The DPW and Arcadis have been working on measuring to determine how significant the problem is. 14 pump stations have been completed. Flow monitoring data collected from 9 meters over the last 6 months is being analyzed. The Stony Brook sewer shed basin, which accounts for a little over 2/3 of the town's flow, has been identified as a top priority in this first phase for inflow and infiltration reduction. The goal will be to target this area in an attempt to remove as much of that clear water as possible with this initial investment. Capital improvements for the first phase include pipelining and the repair of manholes. So pipelining is when a folded liner tube is inserted into a length of pipe, sealed off at both ends, and then inflated with steam. This will be done on approximately 2 miles of piping as dictated by the consultant's report. Underground cameras will be used to assist in videotaping and cleaning approximately 8 miles of pipe in the first year. They will also help to determine which pipes need to be replaced. Work is expected to begin in 2021, late summer, when the ground is not as wet, and work will most likely be halted in September and October as the groundwater level rises. This resolution was approved by the Board of Selectmen on 9/14 of this year and the Board of Finance on 9/15. The Public Works Committee met on October 15th with 10 of 12 members present and voted 9 in favor, 1 abstention. We support this resolution and we ask that the full RTM do the same. Thank you.
Thank you, Monica. That was great. Other committees?
The only hand, I see Robert Lyons has his hand up.
Okay, so no other committees. Then comments from the floor. Robert?
I apologize. My hand was up from the last question.
Okay. Comments from the floor? Okay.
I don't see any.
Okay, ready to vote. Go ahead, Kate. We have
Okay.
our while we're doing this, I do want to thank Kate and Cecil for their spectacular efforts at operating this computer system. It certainly has speeded up things, and we've sort of found our groove, I think, as far as running the meeting, and you've done a great job. Thank you very much.
Okay, Seth, the motion has carried.
Wonderful. That being said, let's, I'll take a motion then to adjourn.
I see John Bolton.
And a second.
We need some hands raised.
Great. All in
Okay.
favor? Leave the meeting.
Or vote in the poll.
Oh, we have a poll too. Oh, this is great.
It's unanimous.
Unanimous. Wonderful. Well,
Oh.
then we are cleared. Meeting is over, and thank you all.